hater things, but I've been pleasantly surprised. I've had so much fun doing it. You reached out to me on Instagram and said, hey, I've got a story to tell, right? And I did a little research, and Marissa's like, one of your big things is you're 30 years old, right?
Yes.
And you've been divorced twice.
Yes.
Now, is that kind of like your brand, or what's up with that?
It became my brand. You know, I just wanted to feel less alone on TikTok. So I started just kind of making those videos like, hi, I'm Marissa. I've been married and divorced twice before 30. Here's my story. And apparently there are a lot of people out there who have also been divorced multiple times. And they're like, you inspire me. You make my life easier. Like knowing I can find my joy after heartbreak is so refreshing. And then outside of that, the people that love you are the trolls and the people that hate you. But yeah, that's inadvertently my brand, that I've been married and divorced twice before 30.
You know, and that's a story, right? So I've been married, third marriage. I will tell you, like, the third one's like a little bit nervous because, you know, you don't want to be known. And I'm sure you're the same way as, oh, that's Marissa. Oh, she's been divorced twice and she's 30 years old. Oh, that's Tim. Yeah. He's on his third. Yeah. So I, have some good conversations with some friends. And when you have to number them, then, that might be problematic. Is that number one, number two? I mean, I don't know if your friends talk to you like that.
No, they
is
do.
that husband one, number two? What is it?
It's mortifying. But yeah, I'll be like, oh, well, my ex-husband used to do this. And they're like, you really need to clarify which one. And I'm like, okay, well, fine.
Yeah. Tell us about a little bit about what you portray and what you do.
I'm very similar to you, right? I have this healing journey, and I want to show people the serious side of owning your past, right? Owning what's happened to you, and also being able to find your joy again. On the other side, I'm like a silly, goofy goober, right? Like I want to go on TikTok and I just want to do awkward dances and poke fun at myself for the fact that I've been married and divorced twice before 30. One of the more controversial posts that I did was just me standing on my balcony, and I had a song in the background, and the words were, when people ask me if I'm ever going to get married again. And the song was, I think it's going to be a long, long time. In my head, I'm like, that's hilarious. This is going to be great. And kind of like your video from this morning, it was like 10,000, 20,000. Now I'm at like 600,000 views on that video. But the hardest part was I'm looking through the comments, and it was like, terrifying, right? It was, you're ugly, you look old, you're damaged, you're defective. Yeah. You're the problem. You're the common denominator. I wonder why they didn't want you. Right. And so I'm like, well, that escalated really, really fast. I'm in bed one night, go to bed on a Monday night. Probably, I'm like a grandma, so I'm in bed by like 8:30. I wake up at 4 a.m. with an Instagram message from a girl who lives in the UK. And she was like, hey, my love, right? She had her cute little British accent, or however that is. And she was like, I just wanted to let you know, I saw the article in the Daily Mail, and I would totally hire you as a life coach, even though you've been divorced. Like, who would not want a life coach without experience? And as lovely as her encouragement was, I immediately was like, what article, And so I go Google my name. And so I'm like, Marissa Baker, life coach, divorced. And if you Google it right now, you will find all of these articles. It's insane. But I just see the first one at the top, the Daily Mail. Life coach is branded a joke after she reveals she's been married and divorced twice before 30. And this article was all about that video and how hateful people had been toward me. And so I'm like, a whole nother country thought that my story was crazy, wild enough to write a whole article about it. So yeah, all of that to say, social media is wild, and it's exciting, and also semi-terrifying.
And I think it all has to be put in perspective, right? So obviously, who gives a shit if somebody, I'm sitting across from you, you're a very pretty lady.
Thanks.
And who cares but people, honestly, that are sitting at home, not doing a whole hell of a lot, are going to write something, right? Because they want, and a lot of people go through the comments and they just do that to stir things up, right? So I think social media can truly be cruel. It can be, but I think if you live your life through it, and that's all you've got, and it's not really like a hobby or fun, or if you try to use it in a different or improper way, it can be problematic, I'm sure.
Oh, 1,000. And you're right? Like if you know who you are and you know who matters, then those opinions, quote unquote, don't matter. I personally was not prepared for it. So I'm on my page and I'm like, oh my God, this is so mean. And I did take it personal at first. And so that was actually something I had to work through as part of my story of understanding who is Marissa? Like, who do I believe that I am? What do I choose to believe about myself so that I'm not so affected by these negative opinions by other people?
I think the divorce, after you go through it once or twice, like it's not a lot harder the third time.
Yeah.
You just don't want to get into it the third time necessarily because you don't want that number.
Exactly. I'm terrified. I'm like, I just kind of opened the door to dating after divorce. And I'm like, do I really want to do this? Because a third would be very scary.
Now, do you ever do you have kids?
No kids.
Okay. Do you ever tell anybody right off, like quickly? Like if you're dating, I've been divorced twice?
Yeah.
You know what you do though is you give a high number. I've been divorced like 5 times already, and I'm 30. Well, and then when you go like just twice, okay, it's not that bad.
Yeah. Well, I have learned that maybe it's not the smartest thing to do to right off the bat be like, I've been divorced twice, because people don't know you and they judge you. But I have, and I've had multiple reactions. One being, right when the article came out, I was supposed to go on a date with a guy, and I was like, yeah, so here's the thing. This article came out. If you see it, I've been married and divorced twice before 30. He ghosted me. Like literally never responded. Like we were supposed to go to dinner the next day, never heard from him again. But then you have the other person where I'm like, hey, just so you know, I've been married and divorced twice before 30. I realize that's a red flag. And they're like, oh, red flag. I love carnivals.
Oh, geez. I like the circus.
Yeah. He's like, let's do it. And I'm like, yes. Yeah. No, I'm a happy-go-lucky ray of sunshine. I'm happy all the time. Don't worry about me. And I resisted and I avoided any feeling that I considered to be negative. The problem when you do that is if you don't process or feel that emotion, it kind of just like stays within your body and then it just lives there. And then you have to find other ways to try to, at least for me, distract yourself from those feelings. So most of my issues was me trying to distract myself. So I was binge drinking. I mean, in my second marriage before I walked away, I was probably like heavily drinking 3 or 4 times a week, which is not like me at all. I was binge eating. Like I would eat and eat and eat. I was like 30 pounds heavier. Not that just goes to show like how much I was eating. And I would binge on Netflix and I would work all the time. I would have done anything not to feel. And I realized like all of the net negative consequences in my life was because of my refusal to, 1, admit how I felt, and to 2, allow myself to just be authentic Marissa.
What does that mean? Is that part of the healing process?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that it is. I think that we grow up and culture tells us who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to live. And I think you live into that. And then one day you wake up and you're like, something just feels off. And I personally believe that in order to be who you're supposed to be, you have to be able to be your full authentic self. And when you can't be your full authentic self, and whatever scenario that is, it's just never good, right? Like we all just have this purpose here and we all are meant to be who we are, like utilizing our unique strengths, talents, and abilities. But if I was too busy pretending that I was 100% okay all the time and nothing was ever wrong, how was I going to dig deeper and be Marissa? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense.
Yeah.
I guess too is if you're in control of, or say you're the one that makes a decision, or say, listen, I'm leaving you. And I've got some friends that have been on the other side of that, right?
Right.
They're not the ones that made that decision. Somebody else in their life made that decision. How does that impact them? I mean, do you think that because you made the decision, you're able to move on is a little bit different than somebody that is like, oh my God, I really loved and cared about that person. They're the ones that made this decision. And now that was who I was supposed to be with for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Now what? Right. And that's kind of where I go to the idea that hurt people are hurt people. I think that I really, really hurt my ex-husbands by handling things the way that I handled them, maybe not giving as much effort as I could have. And like we said, kind of flipping the switch and then just moving forward. Like I guarantee I think my ex actually made a comment about feeling abandoned, right? Which I don't ever want to create more trauma for someone, but I think that's what I did, right? And I can't imagine being on the other side. I know it was very hurtful to them. What I will say is I knew in my soul that it wasn't right, and I had to speak that truth. And over time, my second ex-husband actually reached out and said, hey, thank you for doing that, because I never would have done it. Though at the time, it was like Marissa is the villain and the bad person. So yeah, it definitely doesn't impact them greatly, but
It's what it is.
it is what it is.
Yeah, time. And then I think the big thing is when they're on the other end, right? They found somebody else, and the world is not coming to an end. The sun comes up the next day,
Yes.
and they're moving on. And I think that's a big deal. I
Yeah.
think. So you're coaching. Do you life coach just females, or do you ever think about coaching males?
I'm still deciding. So I actually just got certified this week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and
Okay.
and so I've been like doing a lot of practice coaching and all of that. And I think I am going to gear it towards adult women, especially women who are trying to find themselves after divorce, and or who want to stop repeating the same pattern, because that's obviously the big thing for me. I don't want to continue my life and do this 3, 4, 5 times. Now, whether that's divorce or some other issue that they're struggling with, if I had a male like reach out, absolutely I could coach them and I would be open to it. But I think I am going to focus on adult women.
So you discussed before, and people will come to me for advice, and I'm like, listen, man, I'm not the one for marriage counseling. I'm the freaking last person in the world for marriage counseling, right? And I will tell you that, like, when you're talking to your friends, it's a little bit different, and we have a lot of people that try to go to their friends to get some sort of, but I think reaching out to somebody else that's professional and has that training to be able to do that is going to be a little bit different. So the life coach thing is kind of interesting to me. Is it more of like, how do we, basic foundations of, how should you look at the day? Should you look at it as being bright? Is it okay to have a bad day? Or how does that life coach thing look?
I love that question. So we have a model that I've learned in my life coaching school. It's literally called the Life Coach School. And it's very simple, right? And it's everybody has things that happen to them in their life, right? We all have circumstances, and those are the things that we can't control. We cannot always control everything that happens to us. But typically circumstances are neutral. So if somebody looked at me and said, hey, you look ugly today, it's a fact that they said that, right? But the thought that I have about that circumstance and the meaning that I apply to that circumstance is what will then trigger my feeling about it. And then my feelings will determine my actions, and my actions determine my results. So all life coaching is making somebody aware of their mind and saying, hey, here's the circumstance, here's the thought that you had about it, and here's how this is creating the result in your life. Once you show them that quote unquote result in their life, then they can look at that and say, interesting. Now I get to decide, do I want to keep this thought that's creating this result for me? Or do I want to create a new thought for myself and create a different result? So yeah, it's nothing more than being able to hold space for someone without judgment and say, this is where we're at. And as a life coach, I never actually tell anybody what to do. I just make them aware of their mind, and then I allow them to decide the way to go. It's all about what the client's goals are. And every client knows exactly what they want already. They just have to find it. And we help them do that.
Right. And you talk about basic self-care, right? So tell us a little bit about that, about taking care of yourself, I would assume, and making sure where your baseline is, your stability, that type of thing.
Yeah. So from what I have learned is sometimes when things happen to you, you get in what's called survival mode, and you forget to take care of yourself in the very basic ways. I have the belief that you don't give yourself a fighting chance if you are not taking care of your body and your mind. And this is as simple as, are you drinking enough water?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Are you getting 8 hours of sleep? Are you eating a balanced diet? Are you moving your body every single day? And I can't exactly tell everyone what works for them, but what I can say is if you're doing these simple things, you're meditating, you're doing the water, you're moving your body, you're starting yourself at you're not in the red, right? Like you have the energy that you need to conquer the day. And I never thought I'd be saying this because listen, I'm a mac and cheese with an everything bagel and a Coke kind of girl. I was never really exercising. But over the last 2 years, that's really what I've learned. Like if I want to go from here to here, I have to have the energy to do it. And in order to have that energy, I need to be doing the very basic things to take care of myself.
Yeah. And I think obviously taking care of yourself is the most important thing, right? Exercise. And you mentioned it, Netflix, drinking, doing all these things that are just basically you're isolating yourself and you're going in your little comfort zone cave and not worrying about what's going on around you in the world, Right. And you got to get out. You got to, exercise, do things, make different friends. Maybe a lot of times this stuff can be impacted by who you hang out with socially.
Oh, 1000%. My belief is that your friends determine the direction and the quality of your life. So yeah, there are a million different ways to say how to take basic care of yourself. And at the end of the day, what goes in is what comes out. Garbage in, garbage out, right? So whether it's like food, drink, the people you're talking to, the podcast that you're consuming, not mine though. My podcast is really great. Or the TV shows you're watching. It's really important to know what you're allowing in and how those things are affecting you.
Right. And I'm real big on like listening to positive things. I, like you said, podcasting's like a leadership, ways to, always look. I love to learn new things. Once I learn it, I'm bored with it. Let's go to the next. Same. Right. But you're kind of like always trying to, figure out the stuff. And then, like I said, the social media is kind of cool. I actually, once you figure it out and you learn it, it's like, all right, what's next? How do you kind of slow down and appreciate like what's going on in your life right now? I mean, that's a tough one, I think, for a lot of people. And I've just recently retired. I retired last year. I think I've worked, but I don't consider it work because it's fun.
Yeah.
More so than I did in the past. But, how do we have to say to ourselves, all right, let's slow down, enjoy, what do they say? Smell the roses, enjoy the walk, enjoy the beach. And I kind of work fast and I slow down and I get right back on it again. But, what's your thoughts on that?
I honestly think it comes back to processing feelings, right? Good, bad, or ugly, right? And so when I learned how to process my negative feelings, I also learned how to process my happy and my positive ones. And so I did exactly what you're saying, where it's like, oh, accomplish that goal. What's the next one? Accomplish that one. What's the next thing I'm going to do? And I still kind of do that now to an extent. But there are times where I'm just like sitting at home in my bed and I'm like, I'm going to do my basic care and I'm going to have some lavender tea and I'm going to put the lights down low and I'm just going to like process this feeling. Right. And sometimes that feeling is just like pure gratitude for holy shit, this is my life. Like the fact that I've like gotten to do this or get to continue to do this is such an amazing feeling. And I guess I don't really know the how, but you just have to decide to do it. Like, and the other thing I will say is a lot of times, me specifically, when I would go and never stop, like to the point of burnout, it's because I was doing that thing where I was buffering my feelings and I was trying not to feel. And so sometimes I do have to examine when I am moving so fast. My question to myself is always, are you resisting feeling something? Are you trying to avoid something? And then when I do that, it's usually easier to slow down and have a little bit less urgency in my goals, if that makes sense. Like I'm always moving forward, but it's not like this rush to like be something.
Yeah, because I have a hard time, and I'm not running from anything because I pretty much right now I'm set for the most part. Yeah. I mean, my life is here. I'm in a good spot. It's been great. But when I sit down like on a Sunday and try to sit and just relax and do nothing, I'm like, what should I be doing? I need to be doing something. I'm kind of get guilty about it, right? Like, well, I can't just sit here and do nothing. Yeah. But yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. It's okay. It's okay.
It's totally fine. And I would just for you, right? And this is probably
I get some free advice.
Exactly.
And I need it.
Well, it's like you're allowed to question that thought, right? Because you just said you're home, you're not working on something, and your thought is, I can't just sit here. And it's like, okay, where is that thought coming from, right? Like, when is the last time you had that thought, and what feeling, like, how does it feel when you have that thought? And I think just creating that awareness around something that is kind of subconscious, you're like, oh, I feel guilty because because I had the thought, I can't just sit here. And it's like just becoming aware. And then it's like, okay, is that actually true? And like you said, no, it's not. I can sit here. I can be alone with myself. But this thought is creating this feeling, which is creating me wanting to go.
Yeah. Because I mean, I don't have to go to work. I mean, I'm pretty good. You know, I've set myself up to where I don't have to go to work. I mean, I just don't have to. And that's just not my life. Right? You know, been doing law enforcement for 31 years. I'm so scheduled. I was in the military. I go, and I really like having something on my schedule first thing in the morning because that gets me going. If not, I'm like, hang out. You know, I wake up at like the crack ass of dawn, you know, at like 4:00. Hey, you know, what's going on? Yeah. And everybody else is like, what the hell are you doing up? And then I'll kind of like lay back down or whatever. But having that first morning assignment is kind of fun for me. It's I'm kind of weird, but I do go on vacations. I do all that stuff. So, I mean, I do enjoy every minute. This is not about me, but I'm just saying I get worried about like, hey, I'm 55 and I know these are my go years, right? So I got 55 probably till 75, right? I can go those years because that's a big thing. Like people always have this dream of what it's going to be like when they retire. But the problem is when they're 55 to 75, they, you know, get sick or something comes up. And before you know it, you're like in a hospital somewhere and, you know, things aren't going that well. So I got to make sure I don't miss a minute. Now, let me ask you this. How are you going to get rid of this? I don't think you want to, but how are you going to get rid of this divorce thing, right? So that's kind of how you got to where you're at. And I don't think you should get rid of it because that's kind of where you're at. And that's what makes you interesting to talk to, right? Because if you came to me and said, yeah, I got divorced once, I'd be like, all right, by 30, like, okay, that's half the population. I mean, you got divorced twice by the time you're 30, so that narrows it down to probably 40% of the population. And then narrows it down to, but do you know what I'm saying? Like, are you going to keep pushing that? I think that's a good thing. Yeah. It is what it is, right?
It's my story.
How many more are you going to do? I'm going to ask that question. The question all your friends are asking.
Yeah, probably like 30,000, you know?
30,000. All my TikTok followers, I'm ready to marry you.
The amount of times I get comments on my videos that are like, I'll be your third. And I'm like, no thanks.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, I don't want to get rid of it, to your point. I love who I am. I like what I do. This is all part of my story. And these things happened the way that they happened for a reason so that I could help other people. Now, will it always be the emphasis? Probably not, because I will evolve. And at some point, I won't focus so much on the divorces and I'll focus more on the healing. Or if I start dating again, like it will evolve with my life as it should, but it will always be part of my story. And the part where I went, oh crap, I have to point the finger back at myself. And I don't ever want to forget that. I always want to remember that was the turning point in my life.
Yeah, no, it's good. So we're on a date, you and I. I'm married. We're on a date, right?
Yeah.
We get talking. Okay, we're talking right now. Hey, Marissa, how you doing?
I'm good.
You're so wonderful. What type of food do you like? Marissa's laughing. She's like, "Where's this going?"
I love mac and cheese.
You love mac and cheese. I think they just I love mac and cheese place open just on the corner.
2 days ago.
How was it? Was it all right?
It's amazing.
Okay, great. I have to try it. So I ask you. I go, tell me about yourself. Right? Tell me about yourself. A little coaching on my side.
Yeah.
So, have you ever been married before?
Ow.
Are you gonna like sit back?
I'm just gonna be like, all right. I'm gonna be honest with you. However, and you take this however you want. At this rate, I don't care. Here's my story. I'll tell you that I've been divorced twice. And as we get to know each other, if that's still something you're interested in doing,
check, please. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll let you know more. But yeah, I'm kind of a chronic oversharer as it is. So I meet people, they're like, "Hello," I'm like, "I've been divorced."
Probably they did a little research on you too before, right?
Well, that's the problem with social is I'm all over social media talking about my divorces. So even if we never talked about it, 90% of the time they already know. So it's like,
Well, ask me.
ask, have you been divorced? How many times have you been divorced?
You know, I have. I have been divorced. I've been divorced. I've been married twice, third marriage, and she doesn't like me right now, so that's why we're on a date. No, I'm just kidding.
Good.
So no, yeah. So you're gonna ask me that, right? So it's gonna come back. So if some guy, what is the magic number of divorces that you would say, fuck, I need to go. Need to move on to somebody else.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a number. So
there's people who've been married 6-7 times.
A lot of times, yeah. My thing is there is experience, as John Maxwell says, there's experience and then there is evaluated experience. So if I talk to someone who has been married and divorced multiple times, if they are, again, taking full ownership of what's happened to them and why they are where they are, then I'm like, green flag, right? And so yeah, I guess if they're owning their own BS, then I'm more inclined to stay. But if they're like, my ex was crazy, I'm like, oh no, get me out, you know? So I think it just depends on where they're at mentally and how far along they are in their healing journey.
Yeah, but don't you think that most people, and that's a good thing, right? So if somebody says and starts blaming it all on the other person, that would be like 2 red flags. Boom, 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 right?
It's a whole carnival.
Be like, hey, it just didn't work, and I have a tendency to, obviously say some things about, having kids and I never really say nothing bad. I just say just didn't work out, timing wasn't right, whatever. Kind of move on. But I think if somebody just totally unlaunches hell on their ex, right? You're gonna be like, oh shit, that could be me someday.
Yeah, and people do it all the time. They're like, oh yeah, my ex is crazy. She did this. That's why we didn't work out. I'm like, okay, but what about you? what can you own? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah, and what's really good is being in law enforcement. I interviewed hundreds of bad people, right? And just I'm pretty good at digging out information and finding out and kind of like little flags that pop up and like, you're not so perfect after all. But that's important. So so real quick before we go, please let us know your website one more time.
Yes, so the website is sunhappens.net.
Sunhappens.net, which is an offshoot of maybe shit happens. Sun happens.
Shit happens, but sun happens too. And you get to choose to make it so.
And then your podcast.
It's called Sun Happens again, and it's on Spotify and iTunes.
Yay! It sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I mean, we've got a lot of material here, a lot of things, we can talk about. And, we've even talked about, coming back and doing some other stuff and getting a group together maybe. And I think there's definitely a need for people to, listen to this type of stuff and, kind of gives them a boost in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's important.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm so glad you had me here today.
Yeah, it's great.
Can't wait to see what we do in the future.
Yay! Yeah, awesome. All right, 239, that's Censored Everything Southwest Florida and beyond. And we always do a little fist bump in the middle. We are out.